Welcome. Welcome to the final lecture of this course, how to read and write a scientific paper. So far, in that time, I am alone, but I am starting anyway because the meeting is recorded, as you know, and you will find anyway the video available in Virtuale and in my personal website. So, final lecture, which concentrates on how to write a scientific paper. So perhaps for some of you is the important part of it. I noticed from the questionnaire, which you compiled, the last one, that many of you have already had some experience of writing a scientific paper, which is good. And of course, some others instead are beginners in the learning of from direct experience of how to write a paper. I think it is a good thing because diversity of the audience is an essential ingredient for the success of these learning experiences. Unfortunately, we couldn't really share experiences among you because the number of attendants is very large, and therefore it was impossible to make a selection to organize working groups. I hope anyway that you may get the opportunity, at least with the people whom you know who attended this course. I hope you may get the opportunity to share experiences and therefore to learn from what others did. Welcome for joining. I see that one attendant has joined now. I just started with an introduction. So today, then, we focus on how to write. I just would like to remind you all that this is the last lecture. I will provide at the end of the lecture instructions on taking the final assessment for obtaining the badge. I will provide you more information later on, and the information will be, of course, recorded. So, how to write a scientific paper. First, I would like to let you know that I made available just 1 hour ago, more or less, a third asynchronous video which concentrates itself on how to write a paper, and in particular, the asynchronous video focuses on the relevant question how to select the most appropriate journal. And so the video has been made available 1 hour ago, just 1 hour ago, and it's available in both Virtuale and my personal website. It's on YouTube. It's a video with a duration of about 1 hour, which talks precisely about this relevant question, how to select the most appropriate journal, which is something that is indeed important, as I explained in the video, for making sure that you target the right audience and making sure that you get the most of the benefit from your contribution, from your research contribution. Now, watch the asynchronous video at your earliest convenience, because you may find also questions in the final questionnaire, in the final assessment, related also, of course, to the asynchronous lectures. And if you have any questions related to the course, the full course, and in particular the asynchronous video, don't hesitate to contact me, and I will be happy to reply. Today, I am adopting the usual format. I am teaching until 2:45, and then a break of 15 minutes, and then I will teach again from 3 to 3:45. Now, let me share my screen. First of all, I need to start my presentation. Good. And then I need to share my screen. so that you can see it. So, one second, now you should see my presentation. Yes, so why and how do we want to write a scientific paper? And the first slide refers to what are the learning objectives. So basically, I will go through the writing of considering the whole structure of the paper and the writing of each single section. And you have already taken the opportunity to reply to this questionnaire. If you didn't, you can fill it now. It's now or later. It's in Virtuale. And you can also look at the answers, and I already summarized them briefly. I noticed that some of you, about maybe 20% of you, have already had some experiences in writing a scientific paper. This is good because it means that you can build up on previous learning, previous training, but on the other hand, it's also good if you are a beginner because you can just set the basis for shaping your first experience in the best way. Anyway, so what is a scientific paper? We already know it, but I want to remind that it's a report of original research. And the word original, keep it in mind, because it's important that you get the perception from the beginning of the level of originality of your contribution. This is something that if you have a supervisor, you can gain this perception with the help of your supervisor. It is extremely important because, the structure of the paper and the tone depends on the level of originality. We can range from groundbreaking contributions, which are usually written by experienced researchers. It's unlikely that one can write a groundbreaking contribution as their first paper. So we can range from groundbreaking contribution to innovative contributions, which means that they introduce some, anyway, innovation, some level of originality, but the level of originality may be limited to, for instance, a particular aspect of the methodology. Like, for instance, if we are talking about prediction of climate change, a groundbreaking contribution may be a new modeling tools, a new modeling concept, or a new result which challenges previously established convincement and belief. So while innovative contribution, but at a lower level, may be a parameterization scheme for a prediction model. So the model remains the same, the results are more or less the same, but with a new parameterization scheme, for example, I can produce simulation in a shorter time step. It's still original, but it's not groundbreaking because it's a methodological advance, not really a conceptual or theoretical advance. And then there might be also contributions which give some level of originality in the synthesis of the literature. A typical example is review papers. Review papers don't provide original results, original conclusions, but provide an original synthesis of previous contributions. So it's still innovative, but it's not something really groundbreaking. So you have to perceive quite well with a very objective assessment what is the level of originality. Again, this drives the structure of the paper, the tone of the paper, and also the journal that you are targeting. Okay, so we have to write this scientific report, and the reason why we write it is this is the first volume of Science. Science is one of the most reputed scientific journals at the global level. In terms of some bibliometric rankings, it is ranked at the first or second place. among the whole panorama of peer-reviewed scientific papers, which includes about 30,000 titles. So we write a research paper for many different purposes, but the first target is to provide an advance to science, because this must be our first target, otherwise we wouldn't be researchers. And then another target is to communicate it, because if we don't we communicate it, the research is not really appreciated and therefore is not evaluated. And then through communication, we get visibility for the research and for ourselves. And then we come to our second target, making sure that our career develops in the best way, not only for ourselves, but also for the benefit of science, for the progress of science, because we like to work in a dedicated way and provide a useful contribution. Indeed, writing scientific papers is essential for advancing in the career of academic and professionals, and therefore it's something that we have to get clear in mind. So what is the purpose of our writing? And beware that the target of advancing in our career shouldn't become the priority target of our paper. The priority target must be always advances of science, for the benefit of science, but also for our convenience, because otherwise, if we misidentify and we miss this target, then in the long term, our career also suffers. Also, if we are only looking for our individual benefit, which is not recommendable, but indeed, even if we were only looking for our individual benefit, we should put as first priority the advance of science, and this makes sure that our individual benefit is also maximized. So, in general, you write a paper in general when you have concluded a research, or you are very advanced in the progress, you have already got the results, and therefore the first thing to make sure is that we have, as I already said, clear the innovation, clear what is the motivation. In a broader perspective, you have to get very clear the train of thought related to your paper, which includes the train of thought that you will adopt for writing. You have to well conceive it. It may be useful to start with a series of bullet points. Some people say, some supervisors say, start your paper writing with a PowerPoint presentation. You make a PowerPoint presentation, a presentation including just 10 slides, and with bullet points, and then based on this, you shape your contribution by setting a nice story. So, train of thought leading to a story. Your paper will be more attractive, would get the most possible attraction, and would attract the largest possible audience if it has a clear and nice story behind. There is a say about high-profile papers, those that are published in journals like Nature, Science, and the say is present, if you want to succeed, present a story that is interesting to your neighbor, which means a story for the public, something that is nice, that is exciting, fascinating. This is one of the selection criteria that high-profile journals select. Is this fascinating? Is this attracting the press, the interest of the press? The story includes, of course, what I mentioned so far, what we would like to achieve, and the story must be explained in a clear way, very clear way, with a precise and concise approach, with a rigorous approach, with a logical flow of sections and sentences in the paper with a consistent terminology that is consistent not only internally in the paper, but is consistent with the terminology of the literature. And finally, and this is a requirement that has been introduced in a relatively recent time, make sure that your story includes and grants transparency and reproducibility. If you are interested in getting a large audience, making your results reproducible is a real plus. Let me just go back a little bit to the screen because I want to take a look at the chat in case you ask anything. Okay, good. Now, choosing the right journal. There is an asynchronous video that I made available 1 hour ago, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, which is dedicated to choosing the right journal. And then I'm not spending time on these slides. I'm only making a couple of considerations about the impact factor or other metrics that quantify the reputation of a journal, the visibility of a journal. These metrics, which are available only for a set of scientific journals, those that are called bibliometric indexed journals, these metrics quantify the reputation of the journal by essentially looking at the number of citations in the past 3 years got by the journal. And then the number of citations is, depending on the metrics, may be rescaled by the number of published papers. So basically, they use as supporting information, these indexes, the number of citations, and these indexes are computed by commercial enterprises which made available a database of published papers and related bibliometric indexes. And there are two main ones described extensively in the asynchronous video. The first is SCImago related to Scopus, and the second is Web of Science produced by Clarivate Analytics. Now, these metrics clearly only reflect part of the story, because only taking into account part of the story, because citations are only a part of the story, where with story I mean the reputation. And therefore, for this reason, these metrics are somehow criticized by part of the scientific literature, which questions not really their use for ranking journals. This is something that is accepted. It's a way of ranking journals which may be indeed accepted. The use of these metrics for career development, for hiring, or for funding research proposal is instead questioned, because it is claimed by several people that the assessment of the research output should be done by looking at the content of the research, not really at the number of citations that the research received. Because think of a very bad paper that is cited because people think that is flawed, that is mistaken. Then the paper may get a lot of citations, but these citations are attracted because the paper is wrong. So, I mean, as I said, citations only reflect a part of the story. And therefore, these scientists, academicians that are want to oppose to the use of bibliometrics for career advance, they wrote the DORA Declaration, which I discussed in the asynchronous video. Basically, the DORA Declaration say that the impact factor or any other journal ranking shouldn't be used for career development and for hiring procedures and for research funding. Just keep it in mind, because it's important that we, when we select the journal, consider a lot of information, including impact factor, but on the other hand, also we have to be fully aware of the limits of these bibliometrics, which are widely used. I think we can move forward. And once that you selected the journal, and I mean, first you have completed your research. Second, you have cleared the train of thought of what you want to say. And then you have cleared the targets that you want to achieve. Then you choose the journal, depending indeed on the subject of your research and your preferred achievements, your target audience, journal reputation. And then before writing, you have to look at the journal requirements. So basically, is the journal adopting open access? Yes, okay. Is the journal adopting open review? Yes, okay. What is the requirement of the journal then in terms of paper length, in terms of paper structure, in terms of max allowed length of the contribution, in terms of whatever any other requirement the journal may specify in typically the web page. Okay, let me open a web page of a journal just to explain to you. So let me see here 1 second, because what is on the screen now is not related to what I'm saying. It's related to a further step which I will discuss later. So let's take, for instance, AGO Advances, which I am editing, so it's here. Okay, on the web page, just 1 second, it appears. On the web page, sorry, here it is. On the web page, you see the instruction for authors. Typically, they are under About. You see here author resources. You go here, and then you go to a web page of AGO publication. Let's see where are the instruction of authors actually. Probably it's not here, so I didn't follow the right, let's see, authors. Okay, let me just go back again to AGO Advances because I choose the right link. So let's go down. And resources in founding option. It's interesting also to look and to see the various links and advertising publication. Okay, let's see. I think it's more or less should be here. Okay, let's see again auto resources. Then it must be here. So editor authors, I would say authors, for authors, okay. Okay, perfect. Here are the instructions, journals, okay. And you see the publication requirements. And here somewhere, preparing your manuscript for submission, you see that there are instructions. This is what we wanted a check. So checklist and templates are available below to assist you in preparing your manuscript. Papers may also be submitted directly using the cloud-based authoring tools, Overleaf, CarveNote, and Autorea. We will have a look at Overleaf later on, okay? But for now, just let's see if we open this link, what we get. And you see here, AGO Geophysical Research Letter, AGO Tech Article Official, OpenS template, okay? Let's close this. And then you have here the description of the paper types and paper types, research articles. And they have the description of the length limitation. In particular, they charge excess length fee for manuscript longer than 25 publication units. And then there are the instructions in order to estimate the publication units of your paper. So let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation now. Therefore, you get the journal requirements. The most important ones are those related to the length limitation, to how to structure the paper. Some journals require that you have for instance, introduction, presentation of the results, and methods explained later. Other journals may want first the introduction, and then introduction of the data, and then introduction of the methods, and then results. You have to basically learn what they want. And then they may want a particular format in the analytical formulas, in the mathematical formulas, particular formulas in the list of references. You have to get a clear overview of all of it. When you do this, try to keep in mind that it may happen that you have to submit later the paper to another journal. This is typical in science recently. If authors are rejected by a journal, they try with another one. So just keep in mind that some flexibility in the structure may allow you to be quicker in moving from one journal to another one. What I mean is, you could use a word processor that allows you to quickly change the format in a quicker solution with respect to, for instance, Microsoft Word or LibreOffice. I will explain to you what these possible options are. Namely, also the choice of the word processor is important for the sake of efficiency. These suggestions that I'm giving to you are just related to maximizing efficiency, but keep in mind that if you want to be outstanding, efficiency is a requirement, is not a luxury. So if you want to make the best, to get the best from your career, you have also to look for efficiency. So what are for instance, the mathematical solutions that allow you to reduce computational time? What are the best softwares to be used? What is the best programming code? The best software for making figures? It's not really a nuisance or a luxury, is indeed something related to efficiency, and efficiency is very important. Very good. And then after choosing the word processor, you have to also wonder about open access. I discussed it in the asynchronous video. Open data, open software. Just make sure that you are aware that reproducibility means that other people have all the information needed for reproducing your results. And reproducibility is a very added value, very important added value to your career. And so if you want other people to be able to reproduce your results, you have to make the data available, and some journals require that. You have to make the software available in a way that it can be used by other users, and some journals require that they also review the software that you present. Just keep this in mind, because it's something that may help you a lot in structuring your paper in the best way. Okay. Now let's start discussing the structure of the paper. The title is extremely important. We discussed already it. It should be written with a proper tone, not overly ambitious, but ambitious. I say again, ambitious, but not overly ambitious. And it has to be ambitious at the right level. And then in the title, you have to avoid jargon, because otherwise it would be overambitious or may look like an overstatement. But instead, the title has to be very clear, so that by reading the title, the editor and then the readers get a perception of what you are presenting. This increases the number of readers, increases the number of citations, and may include key variables like CO2 concentration, for instance, if they are known to the large public. And then you have to decide whether it's a question or a statement or a simple description. And then all of these choices have to be made by keeping in mind whether or not we want an ambitious title. My suggestion, don't hesitate to use ambitious titles if you are in doubt. Avoid the unnecessary use, the overuse of ambitious titles, but when you are in doubt, why not? I mean, we have to be ambitious. And of course, we don't have to look pretentious, but we have to be ambitious. We are researchers. Abstract, usually the journal fixes a limit for the number of words or the number of characters. It doesn't exist a unique recipe for writing an abstract, but what is important overall is that the reader, by reading the abstract, has to get very clear what you have done, what is the level of innovation of your study, and why your study is important. So again, what you have done, what is the innovation, why it is important. And therefore, you could use the scheme that is written here. So the background, you may state the problem, and then the scope of the research, how you want to contribute to solving the problem. And then you can say a few words about the methods. You explain the result, and then you put emphasis on innovation. And then you explain with a concluding sentence why the results are important. Keep in mind that often is the most read part of a paper. And when we want to be very quick, what we read is title, abstract, and conclusions. When we want to be very quick in our first pass, as we discussed, it may happen that we read just title or title and abstract. And if the abstract is interesting, then we go to the conclusions. And this is our first pass typically. So beware that you follow a scheme that takes into account these three things and what you have done, innovation, and why it is important. And then very often you are required to provide keywords and key points. The keywords are basically required by any journal, the key points by a subset of journals. The keywords are essentially useful for classifying the paper and for making the paper searchable by automatic search tools. So they are not really important for the reader. It's just they are just used to improve discoverability. And it's better to use standard terminology. Some scientific associations provide lists of keywords. Pay attention to keywords because it's even if they are not really essential to the reader. Anyway, I mean, if the reader sees that the keywords are poor, are not very informative, the reader may get a kind of bad feeling about the paper. And then the key points shouldn't explain what you have done, but should explain why your results are important. So should explain what you found and why the findings are important. So explain what you discovered, like in the second bullet point. And on the right, you can see an example of the highlights that I proposed for one of my last papers. So you see, we propose an approach to do this, this, and this. This approach delivers a new method for doing this, this, and this. The best performing model is model X, and the method improves the predicting capabilities. This is an example of highlights or key points. Some journals call them highlights rather than key points. They are synonyms. It's very important that you pay attention to the key points, highlights, more than the keywords, because, this is, if they are there, then after reading the abstract, the interested reader reads the highlights before reading the conclusions. In some of the cases, I read the highlights even before the abstract. So if they are published, pay attention. You have to really be very efficient in delivering through the highlights, key points, what you have done. The introduction, what you see is a typical scheme for an introduction. So you provide the context, you identify the research gap or gaps, you state the objective or hypothesis, and you basically explain, you may explain also very briefly the methods, you explain the innovation, and then you may conclude it, but this is something that is a bit old-fashioned with an anticipation of the structure of the paper. Like next section presents the data, and then section 3 presents the methods, etc. What is important, I believe, in the introduction is that you keep the attention of the reader very high. So don't spend, this is my personal advice, and take it as something personal. It's not based on an objective assessment of the most frequent recommendations. I wouldn't spend too much time in the content and background. So when I read a paper on water resources management, and the first sentence of the introduction is water is essential for life because it allows the survival of the human species or something related to that. In other words, if I read as the first sentence of a paper a very obvious statement, I lose my attention. My attention goes down. Instead, if I read an unusual first sentence, like for instance, I started the introduction of one of my last papers by saying, uncertainty means lack of predictability. I mean, this is a sentence that, if I read it, I would think that the author is clear what is the end target of the research, and is something that is not obvious. I mean, if I write uncertainty means lack of predictability, is not obvious. If I write water is essential for life, this is obvious. And in some papers I see an introduction to the context and background that lasts for half a page, and this is really not needed. So again, keep the attention of the reader high in the introduction, and of course, explain the context and the background by giving the proper room to it, and explain what is a research question, explain how you address it. But keep in mind the attention of the reader. Another thing, in the introduction, typically you concentrate a lot of references. Make sure the references are appropriate, they are not too many. Make sure that who reads the paper realizes that you put a lot of thoughts in identifying the relevant references and not more than needed. This is a useful indicators of your care, of your careful approach, and helps in keeping the attention of the reader high. Now, these are other suggestions for the introduction. Okay, so cite relevant literature. We already mentioned it. Make clear the research aim. Eventually, you may anticipate the results. And as I said, consider a fancy first sentence, because it's, again, it helps in getting the reader, in keeping the reader motivated. Now, methods. First, let me say once again that not all the journals want the methods explained before the results. Some journals want the results first and then the methods. Anyway, independent of the position in the paper, you have a methods section. And the purpose of this section is to describe how the study was carried out by allowing reproducibility. And therefore, you have to explain any step, starting from the data, starting from the materials, means the models that you may have used, going through the procedures, and also going through the approaches that you used for analyzing the results. Okay. The method section is where reproducibility comes into play. It's the section where you have to make sure that everyone that you say is reproducible. Reproducibility usually is not really part of the introduction. It's not something that you have to consider in the introduction. It's something that you have to consider mainly in the methods section, which is extremely important for this reason. And then, what are the good practices that you may follow? You have to be very detailed, but essential. Don't give unnecessary details. Once again, focus on reproducibility. You can use present or past tense as you prefer, and then you have to include the proper citations and those that help the reader to assess, to repeat the experiment. So the citation that ensure reproducibility, help to ensure reproducibility. Okay, at this stage, we already got the first 45 minutes. So let's make a break. And then I will start again at 3 sharp. I am stopping the recording, so you will get also for this lecture today 2 videos of duration 1 hour each. Thanks. See you in 15 minutes.